There we go. Okay. So now you'll definitely hear me. So I want to get started with the open mic session, but to begin, we're going to start with a report from our board treasurer, recently reelected to another 3-year term. Well, congratulations, John. So John Parks, our board treasurer out of the out of the sorry. John Park from Texas A&M, am I right? And he's going to give a report on the agricultural research that he's been doing.
Well, thanks everybody. Nice to know I was reelected. I don't know if that's good or bad for everybody, but I look forward to serving a little longer. Okay, I'm going to share with you some slides just to let you know. And this is kind of sharing what I do. I was asked to give a bit of an update from the NCERA-210 group. There's a bunch of others who do probably far more in-depth research than what I do. My participation in the group is more from the practitioner side or from the extension side. And so what I do is going to be very directly related to training and education, but that's also why I love participating with ACE. So I'll share you some of that. Quickly, I can tell you though a couple other things that are going on within NCERA-210. Phil Kenkel, I know, I don't know if he's on, but he's been working on developing a model of a co-op model then that we can use to for research to look at impacts on financial statements and other things from other economic impacts. Also, Brian Brigham, I'm aware, is I know he's looking at making some linkages between, say, performance and leadership, and I'm interested in that as well. And that's kind of what I'm going to share with you. Brian is going to hopefully tie that all together with financial information, which is fantastic. I'm going to kind of give you an update on something that I probably shared with you last year, but we'll do that anyway. And if I can, I'm going to share. Oh, we're good. And I think we're all good to go. So you okay right there? I wanted to talk a little bit, and this is research that I've done with my friend, Diane Friend. She is at Texas A&M University, Kingsville. She does teach at a satellite campus, which is nearby, which is really nice for me. So I have to give a lot of credit to Diane and for keeping this research going. She has been fantastic partner on this. And we talked last year a bit about influence. And when you think of influence and what that means, you might often think of this group of people, influencers. They're called influencers. I really personally hate that term because it's so different than what I mean by influence, whether compared to what this seems to imply about influence. And hey, I like Cristiano Ronaldo. He's a great soccer player and I football player. And I love watching him. And there's other people here that are fantastic. But would I consider them influential in my life? Probably not. And what Diane and I feel about influence is that it's the idea of making changes in people. It's that ability to affect, change someone or something in an indirect, but usually an important way. And in that case, it's not about the size of the audience. It's about the impact on the individual. And that's how we feel about influence. And if you're looking at a board standpoint, that's very important. So our model kind of looks like this. It comes in 3 dimensions. I'll just review it quickly from what I did last year. In that we're looking at achieving leadership influence, and cognition takes place on 2 different levels. So cognition takes place depending on your beliefs and your behavior. And then where you apply that are on 3 different domains that we think are important. The first being yourself, The second being small groups where you're interacting with people indirectly or excuse me, directly with one-to-one types of contacts. And then finally, the community. And from community, what we really mean are larger types of organizations where you might have direct contact or indirect contact, or you might not even have contact, and yet you're still being influential on people you may never even meet. So that's what we kind of consider that there's three important domains of influence in your life. And so if you're to break those out, three domains, two different versions or two different portions of cognition, then we have six competencies that are important: consciousness, conduct, connectedness, interactions, representation, and cooperation. And those six key parts of your ability to influence others are important skills that you will develop in your leadership life, and they're very important then for directors of a cooperative organization to understand. And what Diane and I have done is developed then an assessment for board members, although we can apply this to many different situations, many different types of groups. But consider this, that if we gave this to a board of directors, our assessment, and then they're assessing themselves, and where it says group, well, that could be board, their board, and community, well, that could be their co-op. And so if they're assessing their abilities to influence on those six different competencies, then we can develop a score. And that's kind of where our research is going right now, is that we're starting to have a better understanding of how people and who is taking this assessment and how these different competencies interact. And we often then will use this in workshops and basically provide some scores and challenge the individuals to make goals. And you've probably seen SMART goals before: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound goals. And so that's currently what Diane and I are doing with workshops. Let me give you just a hint at what we're thinking, where we'd like to go with research. So this is great just for helping directors be better directors. Great. But what if you gave this to a board and the board has a weakness, and overall, maybe they're weak on one side? Do they have some type of a blind spot within their board governance? For example, if they're weak on the community domain or the cooperation and the representation competencies, is it possible they're going to have problems with relevance or inclusivity in their co-op or in their governance? That's possible. And if they were weak on interactions, the one-to-one type of interactions in the boardroom, problems with connectedness, problems with interaction, then are they going to have a lack of communication? How does that impact then the board's ability to govern? And then finally, even if they're all weak on the self-consciousness level and conduct, maybe there's a lack of empathy, or maybe even it's hard to care about a decision that only impacts others and not myself. And so how is it going to impact decision making in the co-op? And so we think it might be interesting then to start looking at these profiles of boards, then also try and tie it back to some performance data as well. But there's a lot of other things to tie it to in terms of board behaviors. But that's a little bit really kind of tough to get at some of that data. We realize that, but we still find this as a useful tool for training. It'll always at least be that, but hopefully we can push the boundaries a little further on some of this research as well. So that's about all I have for that. Oh, other than to say, Diane and I have used this in a lot of different settings, not even just board settings, but to think about my ability to influence others in the world around me depends on maybe three things if it helps: conscious conduct, connected interactions, and represented cooperation. And thinking on those three levels have often helped me solve problems I've had in the classroom or in work, in a faculty meeting, even, or in many different situations and settings. Thinking of your influence on these three levels is very helpful. So there's my co-author and partner in crime. I don't know what else to call Diane. She is fantastic and a great support and help. We'd love to talk to anybody about this anytime. There's easy to get in touch with us if you like in that way. And that's all I have for you guys today. I'm going to turn time back over to Michael or for questions or whatever we'd like.
Sorry. Okay, are we good? All right. Thanks, John. Any questions for Dr. Park? I think it's a really interesting framework, and I'm curious about how you would, if I had time, I would ask you to like go into the different measures and how you actually come up with those scores. But really, really interesting. Any questions from the audience? So Michael is asking if there's any kind of, I don't know, maybe case studies that you've actually employed this tool with the co-op board. You know, how does this actually work in practice? John? John?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I guess that didn't go through. All right, I'll restate this question. So the question was, is there any case studies where you've actually applied this in a co-op? And you know, what have you know, how has that actually worked? You know, how do you actually take this theoretical concept, the structure you've developed, and actually apply it to a real world situation?
Well, we can look at that in two different ways. The one is, do I have case studies of the use of the model? Not necessarily. We have used it for training purposes, and that's great. Haven't exactly documented that. On the other hand, we can use the model for even existing cases, and as far as how to address or how to answer those problems. We have a case, for example, that I teach about the Pedernales Electric Co-op over in Johnson City, Texas. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but the case really showed that there was a lot of conflict of interest with the board, a lack of transparency, some problems with governance in that case. And by looking at it and saying and identifying, say, the problems with at the self level, the board level, and the co-op level, we were able to. It just gave a structure or a framework to be able to talk about some of those issues. And so I have found it useful in that way. But I don't have a good documentation yet of a co-op we've worked with then applied that. So that's kind of the ongoing part of our research.
Michael's questions because they're coming from, Michael's not on mic. So it's sort of what are your next steps in terms of developing this?
I do think that we've kind of hit the point right there. It'd be great to have a good co-op that would trust us to work with their board and be able to start tying some of this stuff to their board characteristics, but also to performance. And that would be interesting. But it's going to take some co-ops to trust us and to just be willing to give it a go and see how it goes. But the data is kind of hard to come by, but we think we can do it with the right co-ops.
Thanks, John. I think that's, and I can certainly, do you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick question.
Yeah.
In terms of on the board,
Okay, come to the mic if you're going to ask, or I can repeat.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, so my
Hi.
question, okay, my name is Juliet Kego Monido, and I'm with the Black Women Professional Worker Co-op out in Toronto, Canada. And thank you for sharing that report with us. My question is, would this be more relevant prior to selecting a board, or after you've actually composed your board? So for newer co-ops, for instance, would there be applications even before the board selection process? Thank you.
Sure, that's a great question. I think it's always applicable after, but only because I'm going to say that I think there's always room for personal growth, all of us, no matter who your board is. And the board that is really focused on education and self-improvement are the boards who make good decisions. So I do think it's applicable there. Now, could you do it beforehand saying, hey, this is our weakness in our board. Let's get a better mix in here. Sure. Diane and I believe that little sphere of influence, or that measure, that you can expand those, you can change, and you can change your own behavior. So just being aware of how it is great. On the other hand, understanding other board members or potential members coming in saying, we really need somebody who's going to be a connector in the board. That's not bad either. Although here in Texas, what we've been doing lately is we use the predictive index with some of our co-ops, and our co-op council, we're using predictive indexing. And that's also a decent way to do it. There's a lot of different leadership tools. I think they're all useful within their framework, but remember, they're just tools to help you make a good decision. And I'm not going to say that this one's any better. It's a matter of your willingness to adapt it and to apply it to what you're doing. Your willingness to accept what it says, even though it might be personally challenging to you to say, oh, I'm kind of weak in this area. Yeah, that's okay. You're just different in that area. There's nothing wrong with that. I think I dodged the question well enough. Sorry if I did, but I think there's use on both sides of that.
Juliet, for the question. So I think we probably want to, I don't know if there's, I really want to thank you for presenting here. And, I'll see you soon since we have a board meeting in an hour.
Right.
So,
good.
But
Right.
I
Well,
want to pass the mic on for other folks to be able to give brief updates, and you're welcome to stay around and participate online.
I will. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Michael, do you want to make an announcement here? Or okay, Michael wants to make a few announcements, then we'll go to sort of member updates. Okay.